The Council's question, the great chamber of Station Nexus Prime, hummed with the quiet energy of 1,000 worlds. Ambassador Elena Vasquez adjusted her formal diplomatic robes as she took her place at the human delegation's table. The circular hall stretched up into darkness, its walls lined with the seats of representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Some breathed oxygen like humans, others required specialized atmospheric suits, and a few existed as pure energy contained within crystalline matrices. Today's session was different. 3 new species had recently joined the Galactic Council, and their questions had been growing more persistent each week. The Vorphic, insectoid beings with razor-sharp mandibles, had submitted formal inquiries about galactic law. The Melody, peaceful plant-like creatures from the Outer Rim, expressed confusion about certain regulations. Most concerning were the Nexari, a proud warrior race that had conquered dozens of worlds before agreeing to join the galactic community. High Counselor Zephyrus rose from his ancient seat at the center of the chamber. His species, the Etherians, had witnessed the birth and death of countless civilizations. His translucent form shimmered with age and wisdom, accumulated over 3 millennia of existence. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of history itself. Fellow beings of the galaxy, Zephyrus began, his words translated instantly into thousands of languages. Today, we address questions that have been raised by our newest members. Questions about the Sacred Covenant, our most fundamental law. Commander Thane Blackwood, Elena's military advisor, leaned forward in his chair. His scarred face bore the marks of countless battles fought to maintain galactic peace. He had served in the Human Defense Corps for 40 years, and his presence here was no coincidence. Some conversations required a soldier's perspective. Nexari War Chief Valoran stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow across the chamber floor. His species stood 8 feet tall, with armored skin that could deflect most energy weapons. They had never known defeat in battle until they encountered humanity's diplomatic corps and chose cooperation over conquest. Honored Counselor, Valoran's voice rumbled through the chamber, my people have reviewed the galactic legal codes. We understand most laws, but one seems to grant humans special privileges. Universal Law Number 1 states that no being may harm human children under any circumstances. This appears to violate the principle of species equality. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Vorthic ambassador clicked her mandibles in agreement. The Melody representative's leaves rustled with curiosity. Other species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was not the first time newer members had questioned the Sacred Covenant. Elena felt the familiar weight of this moment. Every few decades, new species would join the Council and ask the same questions. They would wonder why humans received special protection, why their children were considered untouchable when others were not. The answer was always the same, but it never got easier to tell. The ancient warning High Counselor Zephyrus's form brightened, a sign of deep emotion among his people. War Chief Valoran, your question is not new. Many species have asked the same thing over the centuries. The answer requires a history lesson that some of us lived through personally. The chamber's holographic displays activated, showing a star map of the galaxy as it existed 400 years ago. Thousands of star systems glowed in different colors, representing various empires and federations. One section pulsed with angry, red light. 4 centuries ago, Zephyrus continued, the Chronari Empire controlled over 300 star systems. They were the dominant military force in this sector of the galaxy. Their technology was advanced, their fleets were massive, and their ambition knew no bounds. They believed themselves destined to rule all intelligent life. The display zoomed in on a smaller cluster of blue stars. At that time, humanity was young in galactic terms. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries earlier. Their territory consisted of perhaps 50 star systems, mostly agricultural worlds and mining colonies. To the Chronari, humans appeared weak and insignificant. Commander Blackwood's jaw tightened. He had studied this history extensively during his military training. Every human officer knew the story of the Chronari War, but hearing it told in this chamber, surrounded by aliens who had lived through it, gave the tale new weight. The Chronari Emperor, Drakthos the Conqueror, decided to make humanity an example, Zephyrus said. He wanted to show the galaxy what happened to species that refused to submit to Chronari rule. His target was a human colony ship called the New Hope. The hologram changed to show a massive vessel, clearly designed for long-term space travel. Its hull was scarred but sturdy, built to carry families across the void to new worlds. Gardens and recreational areas were visible through transparent sections. It was clearly a civilian vessel, designed for peace, not war. The New Hope carried 40,000 human colonists to a world they called Haven's Garden, Zephyrus continued. 20,000 of those colonists were children, families seeking a better life among the stars. The ship was unarmed, traveling through neutral space under the protection of galactic law. The Chronari massacre, the chamber fell silent as the hologram showed what happened next. Chronari warships, sleek and deadly, surrounded the colony ship. Their weapons were charged, their intent clear. Ambassador Elena closed her eyes, knowing what was coming, but unable to stop the historical record from playing out. Emperor Drakthos personally led the attack, Zephyrus said, his voice heavy with ancient sorrow. He did not demand surrender. He did not offer terms. He simply ordered his fleet to destroy the New Hope and everyone aboard. The hologram showed the brief, one-sided battle. The colony ship had no weapons, no shields, no way to defend itself. Chronari energy beams tore through its hull like paper. Sections of the ship exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Emergency pods scattered into space, but the Chronari ships hunted them down systematically. The attack took 6 hours, Zephyrus continued. The Chronari made sure there were no survivors. They broadcasted the destruction across the galaxy, along with a message from Emperor Drakthos. He said this was what happened to species that refused to kneel before the Chronari Empire. War Chief Valoran's armored skin had turned a darker shade, indicating distress among his people, the children. They were deliberately targeted. Not just targeted. Commander Blackwood spoke for the first time, his voice cold as space itself. Hunted. The Chronari used their most advanced weapons to ensure that even the escape pods carrying children were destroyed. They wanted to break human morale completely. The Melody representative's leaves wilted with shock. How did the galaxy respond to such brutality? Zephyrus's form dimmed. Most species offered diplomatic protests. Trade sanctions were discussed. Some governments sent formal complaints to the Chronari Empire, the usual political responses to atrocity. And humanity? Asked the Vorthic ambassador. Humanity went silent, Kalena said quietly. For 3 months, not a single human ship moved through galactic space. No diplomatic communications were sent. No trade agreements were signed. The galaxy thought perhaps humanity had given up. Perhaps they had learned their lesson and would submit to Chronari rule. A hologram shifted to show human space during those 3 months. Instead of the usual traffic of merchant vessels and exploration ships, there was only darkness. But in that darkness, something was building. The awakening, what humanity was actually doing, Zephyrus continued, was something the galaxy had never seen before. They were transforming their entire civilization into a weapon of war. Every factory, every shipyard, every resource was turned toward a single purpose, the complete destruction of the Chronari Empire. A display showed the scale of human mobilization. Peaceful mining worlds became weapons factories. Agricultural colonies began producing military supplies. Research stations developed new technologies of war. Most shocking of all, civilian volunteers joined the military by the millions. The human fleet that emerged from their space was unlike anything in galactic history, Zephyrus said. Not just in size, though they had assembled over 100,000 warships. What made them different was their purpose. They had not come to conquer territory or claim resources. They had come to end the Chronari Empire completely. Commander. Blackwood stood up, his military bearing commanding attention. The first battle was at Chronari Station Alpha, their main military base. The Chronari had 2,000 warships defending it. The human fleet destroyed them all in under 4 hours. But they did not stop there. The hologram showed the systematic destruction of Chronari military installations. Planet after planet fell to human forces. But these were not ordinary conquests. The humans did not occupy territory or claim resources. They simply erased every trace of Chronari military power. The Chronari Emperor tried to surrender after losing half his fleet, Blackwood continued. He offered tribute, territory, anything humanity wanted. The human response was simple. The children of the New Hope demand justice. The war lasted 3 years, Zephyrus said. But it was not really a war. It was a hunt. The humans tracked down every Chronari military vessel, every military base, every weapons facility. They dismantled the Empire piece by piece. The display showed the methodical nature of the human campaign. They did not attack civilian targets, did not harm non-combatants. But anything connected to the Chronari military was destroyed with terrifying efficiency. The turning point came when the humans developed quantum tracking technology, Elena explained. They could follow Chronari ships through hyperspace, locate hidden bases, even find individual officers who had participated in the New Hope massacre. There was nowhere in the galaxy the Chronari military could hide. War Chief Valoran's voice was barely a whisper. What happened to Emperor Drakthos? The human fleet found him on the furthest edge of Chronari space, Blackwood said. He was hiding in a bunker built into an asteroid, surrounded by his most loyal guards. The humans sent a single ship to collect him. The hologram showed the final confrontation. A lone human vessel approached the asteroid fortress. It was not a massive battleship or a fleet of destroyers. It was a small, unremarkable ship that looked almost like a civilian transport. The ship was called the Children's Promise, Elena said. It carried 300 human soldiers, all of whom had lost family members in the New Hope massacre. They entered the asteroid fortress and fought their way to the Emperor's bunker. The display showed the brief battle inside the fortress. The human soldiers moved with mechanical precision, their advanced armor and weapons giving them an overwhelming advantage. But what struck observers was not their technology, but their determination. They advanced through enemy fire without hesitation, driven by a purpose that transcended normal military objectives. Emperor Drakthos was brought to trial before a joint human galactic tribunal, Zephyrus continued. The evidence against him was overwhelming. The sentence was death, to be carried out by the families of the New Hope's victims. The aftermath. But the most significant outcome was not the Emperor's fate, Elena said. It was what happened to the galaxy afterward. The human military demonstration had shown every species what humanity was capable of when their children were threatened. The response was unprecedented. The hologram shifted to show the aftermath of the Chronari War. The galaxy had been transformed. Trade routes were reorganized. Military alliances were restructured. Most importantly, a new law was proposed and accepted by every major government. The Sacred Covenant was born from the ashes of the Chronari Empire, Zephyrus said. Universal. Law number 1. No being may harm human children under any circumstances. This was not a privilege granted to humanity. It was a protection demanded by the galaxy itself. The Vorthic ambassador clicked her mandibles in confusion. But why only human children? What about our own young? Because, Commander Blackwood said grimly, no other species has ever demonstrated the ability to end entire civilizations in response to attacks on their children. The Chronari had the most powerful military in the galaxy, and humanity erased them from existence in 3 years. The law exists to prevent that from happening again. Elena nodded. The Sacred Covenant is not about human superiority. It is about galactic survival. Every species that has ever considered harming human children has been reminded of what happened to the Chronari Empire. The law has prevented countless wars. The lesson-learned High Counselor Zephyrus's form brightened again as he addressed the newer species. War Chief Valoran, honored delegates, the Sacred Covenant has maintained galactic peace for 4 centuries. In that time, humanity has become our greatest protector. They patrol dangerous regions of space, stop pirate attacks, and defend weaker species from aggression. The display showed the current state of the galaxy. Trade flourished between thousands of worlds. Cultural exchange programs brought species together. Scientific collaboration had advanced technology beyond what any single species could achieve alone. Humanity asks for nothing in return, Zephyrus continued, except that their children be safe. This is not an unreasonable request. It is the foundation of galactic civilization. The Melody representative's leaves rustled with understanding. So the law protects us all by preventing humanity from having to demonstrate their military capabilities again. Exactly, Elena said. The Sacred Covenant is not about fear. It is about respect. Respect for the bonds between parent and child that exist in every species. Respect for the consequences of breaking those bonds. War Chief Valoran stood silent for a long moment, processing what he had learned. Finally, he spoke. My people have fought many wars. We understand the price of conflict. If honoring this law maintains peace, then the Nexari Empire will uphold the Sacred Covenant. The other new species voiced their agreement. The Vorthic ambassador promised to educate her people about the law's importance. The Melody representative offered to share the story with their peaceful colonies. The Eternal Vigil, as the session concluded, Commander Blackwood approached the viewing gallery where human military observers had been watching the proceedings. These were officers from the Human Defense Corps, men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting the innocent. The younglings understand now, one of them said. For now, Blackwood replied, but there will be others. New species will join the council, and the questions will be asked again. The story will need to be told again. Elena joined them at the viewing port, looking out at the stars beyond the station. And we will tell it as many times as necessary. The children of the New Hope deserve to be remembered. In the depths of space, human patrol ships continued their eternal vigil. They protected trade routes, investigated distress calls, and maintained the peace that the Sacred Covenant had created. Most of the galaxy's citizens never saw these ships, never knew how many threats were quietly neutralized before they could become wars. But the ships were there, crewed by humans who understood the price of failure. They carried the memory of the New Hope and the promise that such a tragedy would never happen again. They were the guardians of the Sacred Covenant, and they would never rest dot as the alien delegates departed from Station Nexus Prime. They carried with them a new understanding of galactic law. The Sacred Covenant was not about human privilege. It was about the bonds that connected all intelligent life, the universal need to protect the innocent, and the terrible consequences of forgetting that need. The galaxy had learned its lesson 4 centuries ago. The Sacred Covenant ensured that lesson would never be forgotten in the quiet of space. The stars continued their ancient dance, watched over by guardians who understood that some laws were worth any price to maintain. The children of 1,000 worlds slept safely, protected by a promise written in the ashes of an empire that had dared to break faith with humanity. The sacred covenant endured, and the galaxy was at peace. Asterisk, asterisk. The Draconian Gambit 3 months after the council session on Station Nexus Prime, the galaxy faced its greatest test since the Chronari War. In the distant Cygnus sector, Empress Scara of the Draconian Empire stood before her dying throne world, watching the last of her people's strength fade away. The Draconians had once been a proud warrior race, their scaly hides resistant to most weapons, their natural flight capabilities making them formidable in battle. But a plague had swept through their territory, a disease that attacked their respiratory systems and left them unable to breathe in their native atmosphere. Entire worlds had been evacuated, their populations crowded into artificial habitats that were failing one by one. "Your Majesty," General Korath wheezed through his breathing apparatus. "The medical stations report another 1,000 deaths today. The artificial atmosphere processors are breaking down faster than we can repair them." Empress Scara's golden eyes reflected the dying light of her empire. She was the last of her bloodline, her scales dulled by the weight of leadership, the burden of watching her people slowly suffocate. "How long do we have?" 6 months, maybe less, Korath replied. "The humans have offered medical aid, but their doctors say the plague is too advanced. They can slow it, but not stop it." Scara turned away from the viewing port with the lights of refugee ships dotted the darkness like dying stars. "And the relocation offers?" "The Etherians have offered sanctuary on their atmospheric worlds. The Melody would welcome our people in their garden habitats. Even the Vorthic have suggested integration programs." Korath's voice carried the desperation of a species facing extinction. "But none of them can house our entire population. We would be scattered across the galaxy, eventually absorbed into other cultures. The Draconian Empire would end not with battle, but with dispersal." The Empress closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 8 centuries of Draconian history pressing down upon her. Her ancestors had conquered dozens of worlds, built a civilization that had lasted millennia. Now she was being asked to watch it dissolve peacefully into the galactic community. "There is another option," she said quietly. General Korath's breathing apparatus hissed as he turned to face her. "Your Majesty? The humans have resources we need. Medical technology, atmospheric processors, entire worlds with breathable air. Their colony world, Haven's Rest, has the exact atmospheric composition our people need to survive without artificial support." "The humans would never give up an entire world," Korath protested. "And even if they would, we lack the strength to take it by force." Scara's golden eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "Not by force, by law." The general's confusion was evident even through his breathing mask. "I don't understand." "The sacred covenant," Scara explained. "The law that protects human children. What if that law could be turned against them?" Korath took a step backward, his warrior's instincts warning him of danger. "Your Majesty, you cannot be suggesting—" "I am suggesting nothing," Scara said firmly. "I am planning. The humans have made their children the cornerstone of galactic law. If someone were to attack those children, humanity would respond with overwhelming force. But what if the attack came from a dying empire with nothing left to lose?" The terrible logic of her plan began to unfold. The humans would mobilize their fleets to destroy us, yes, but they are honorable beings. They would not let an entire species die of plague when they could prevent it. If we attacked their children, if we forced them to destroy us, they would feel obligated to save our survivors. "You want to commit genocide against our own people?" Korath's voice was horrified. "I want to save our people," Scara corrected. "The plague will kill us all anyway. But if we die as enemies of humanity, they will remember us. They will honor our sacrifice by caring for our survivors. Our children will live as humans, raised in human culture, breathing human air. The target Haven's Rest was a jewel among human colonies. Located in the Kepler system, it had been terraformed over 3 centuries to create the perfect environment for human families. The world's 3 continents were covered in cities designed for children, with wide parks, safe playgrounds, and schools that were considered the finest in human space. Captain Marcus Chun stood on the observation deck of the Orbital Defense Station, watching the morning sun rise over New Geneva, the colony's capital city. Below him, 8 million humans lived in peace. 2 million of them children attending schools, playing in parks, and growing up in the safety that the sacred covenant had provided. "Beautiful morning," commented Lieutenant Sarah Kim, his communications officer. She was young, barely out of the academy, and her optimism reminded Chun of his own daughter, who was attending university on Earth. "Every morning is beautiful here," Chun replied. "That's what makes it worth defending." The defense station was small by military standards, designed more for traffic control than warfare. Haven's Rest had never been attacked, never even threatened. The sacred covenant had made it the safest world in human space. "Sir," came a voice from the sensor station, "we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system. Looks like about 50 ships." Chun frowned. Haven's Rest was a popular destination for colony ships and trade vessels, but 50 ships arriving simultaneously was unusual. "Can you identify them?" "Negative, sir. They're not broadcasting standard identification codes." A chill ran down Chun's spine. In his 20 years of service, he had never encountered ships that refused to identify themselves in human space. Red alert. All stations prepare for potential hostile contact. The defense station's crew moved with practiced efficiency, but Chun could see the uncertainty in their faces. They had drilled for this scenario countless times, but none of them had ever expected to face an actual attack. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim reported, "the unknown ships are moving into attack formation. They're heading directly for the planet." Chun's blood turned to ice. "Are you certain?" "Confirmed, sir. 50 vessels, all armed, all moving toward Haven's Rest. Estimated time to orbital engagement, 6 hours." The captain's mind raced through the possibilities. Pirates occasionally attacked outer colonies, but they never came in such large numbers. Military exercises sometimes involved multiple fleets, but those were always announced in advance. This was something else, something that violated every principle of galactic law. "Send a message to all approaching vessels," Chun ordered. "This is Haven's Rest Defense Command. You are approaching a protected human colony world. Identify yourselves immediately and state your intentions." The response came in a voice that was clearly non-human, translated through universal communication protocols. "This is Empress Skara of the Draconian Empire. We claim this world under the ancient right of conquest. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." The attack, the first wave of Draconian ships, entered Haven's Rest orbit like a storm from space. Their vessels were sleek and predatory, designed for speed and aggression rather than the heavy armor favored by other warrior races. Energy weapons lanced down from orbit, striking the planet's surface with surgical precision. But these were not random attacks. The Draconians had studied human colony layouts extensively. They knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum psychological damage. The first target was Riverside Elementary School in New Geneva. The building exploded in a ball of fire just as classes were beginning. 300 children died in the first 30 seconds of the attack. The second target was the Children's Hospital in Port Wilson. The third was New Haven Academy, where the colony's most promising young minds were being educated. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was in the pediatric ward when the attack began. The building shook as energy beams struck nearby structures, and she could hear the screams of children echoing through the corridors. Her first instinct was to run, but her training took over. She began organizing the evacuation of her young patients, carrying infants and leading toddlers toward the emergency shelters. Asterisk. "Dr. Mitchell," called Nurse Rodriguez, her voice barely audible over the sound of explosions. "The transport ships are targeting the evacuation routes." Sarah looked up to see Draconian fighters diving toward the civilian transports that were trying to carry children to safety. The ships were being shot down one by one, their passengers killed before they could reach the underground shelters. "They're not trying to conquer the colony," Sarah realized with horror. "They're trying to murder the children." In orbit, Captain Chun watched his worst nightmare unfold. The 3 patrol ships under his command were heavily outgunned, but they threw themselves at the Draconian fleet with desperate courage. The defense station's weapons were designed for asteroid clearing, not military engagement, but Chun ordered them to fire everything they had. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim reported, "we're receiving emergency transmissions from the planet. The Draconians are specifically targeting schools, hospitals, and residential areas. They're not attacking military installations or industrial centers." Chun's face went pale. In all his years of service, he had never encountered an enemy that deliberately targeted children. Pirates took prisoners for ransom. Conquerors sought to claim territory. But this was something else entirely. "Get me a priority channel to Earth Command," Chun ordered. "Emergency code Black. The Sacred Covenant is being violated." The message, the emergency transmission from Heaven's Rest, reached Earth Command in the middle of the night. Admiral Jessica Storm was awakened in her quarters by the most dreaded alarm in human military history. Code Black meant that human children were under deliberate attack. The one scenario that every officer hoped never to face. Storm was a veteran of dozens of campaigns, a woman who had spent 40 years protecting human interests across the galaxy. She had fought pirates, negotiated with hostile aliens, and maintained the peace that the Sacred Covenant had established. But she had never dealt with a direct violation of humanity's most sacred law. "Report," she ordered as she strode into the command center, still fastening her uniform. "Haven's Rest is under attack," reported Captain Williams, the Night Watch commander. 50 Draconian vessels. They're specifically targeting civilian areas with high child populations. Storm's face became a mask of cold fury. Casualties? Preliminary. Reports suggest over 10,000 dead, including approximately 3,000 children. The attacks are ongoing. The Admiral stood silent for a moment, processing the magnitude of the atrocity. Then she began issuing orders with mechanical precision. "Activate the emergency response protocol. I want every available ship in the sector moving toward Haven's Rest within the hour. Send recall orders to all human vessels throughout the galaxy. Priority Alpha." "Ma'am," Captain Williams hesitated. "Priority Alpha is for total war mobilization." "Are you certain?" Storm's eyes were like chips of ice. "Captain, someone has just murdered 3,000 human children." "Yes, I am certain." Within hours, the recall order had reached every human ship in the galaxy. Trade vessels abandoned their cargo and headed for human space. Exploration ships cut short their missions and began the journey home. Diplomatic vessels made polite excuses and departed their posts. But most significantly, the message reached the human patrol fleets that maintained order in the galaxy's most dangerous regions. These ships were the guardians of galactic peace, the quiet protectors that most citizens never saw. They began moving toward Earth with a purpose that made veteran spacers step aside. Behind. Response to human fleet that assembled at Earth was unlike anything seen since the Chronari War. 7,000 ships of all classes, from massive dreadnoughts to swift destroyers. But more than their numbers, it was their purpose that made them terrifying. Every officer, every crew member, Every Marine had seen the recordings from Haven's Rest. They had watched children die, had heard their screams, had seen their bodies. In the rubble of schools and hospitals, Admiral Storm stood on the bridge of her flagship, the U.E.'s Righteous Fury, watching the fleet take formation. These were not conquerors seeking territory or politicians playing games. These were parents, siblings, aunts, and uncles who had just watched someone murder their children. "Admiral," reported her communications officer, "we're receiving surrender. Offers from the Draconian Empire. Empress Skara is requesting negotiations." "Tell her we don't negotiate with child killers," Storm replied without emotion. "Set course for Draconian space, maximum speed." The journey to the Draconian Empire took 3 days. 3 days during which the scope of the atrocity became clear. The final death toll from Haven's Rest was 15,000 civilians, including 5,000 children. The Draconians had hunted down evacuation ships, targeted emergency shelters, and used their most advanced weapons to ensure maximum casualties. But more than the numbers, it was the deliberate nature of the attack that horrified the galaxy. The Draconians had not been trying to conquer Haven's Rest. They had been trying to commit genocide against human children. Why? Admiral Storm asked her intelligence officer. What possible reason could they have for such an attack? "Commander." Haze, a veteran analyst, looked up from his reports with haunted eyes. "We believe it was a calculated gambit, Admiral. The Draconian Empire is dying from a plague. They have maybe 6 months before total extinction. Empress Skara appears to have believed that, by attacking our children, she could force us to respond. With overwhelming force. And then what? We destroy them faster than the plague would? No, ma'am. We think she was counting on human compassion. After we destroyed their military, she expected us to feel obligated to save their civilian population. She was essentially committing suicide by human fleet, but with the expectation that we would care for her survivors." Storm stared at the intelligence report in disbelief. "She murdered 5,000 children to manipulate us into saving her people? That appears to be the plan. Yes, ma'am." For the first time since the crisis began, Admiral Storm felt something other than cold fury. She felt a deep, abiding sadness for a species that had become so desperate that they would sacrifice their own souls for survival. The reckoning, this human fleet arrived at the edge of Draconian space to find Empress Skara's forces waiting for them. The Draconian ships were arranged in a defensive formation around their dying throne world, but it was clear they were not prepared for a serious battle. They were simply waiting to die. "This is Admiral Storm of the Human Defense Corps," came the transmission across all frequencies. "You have violated the sacred covenant. You have murdered human children. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths swift." Empress Skara's response was broadcast from her flagship, her golden eyes visible to the entire human fleet. "I am Skara, last Empress of the Draconian Empire. My people are dying. I have chosen to make our end meaningful. Do what you must. But remember that we were once great." The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than an hour. The Draconian ships fought with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. One by one, they were destroyed by the overwhelming firepower of the human fleet. But as the last Draconian warship exploded in a ball of fire, something unexpected happened. The human fleet did not turn away. Instead, they began moving toward the plague-stricken worlds where millions of Draconian civilians waited to die. "Admiral," reported her medical officer, "we're detecting massive civilian populations on the inner worlds. They're all infected with the plague, but our medical teams might be asterisk.